So, a very warm welcome to everyone who's watching on our live stream at home, either on the Royal Opera House's website or on the Roundhouse YouTube channel, and a very warm welcome to everyone who's come to the Studio Theatre here at the Roundhouse for this very special Insight event. Tonight we're going to take you to hell and back. We're going to be looking behind the scenes at a brand new production of Monteverdi's Orfeo, the very first opera, and it's a groundbreaking collaboration between the Roundhouse and the Royal Opera House. My name is Sara Mohr-Pietsch. I'm a music broadcaster for BBC Radio 3 and I also regularly present Insight events at the Royal Opera House, and it's a real pleasure for me to be here, particularly because tonight's event is unique. It's been put together, produced and is being live streamed by young emerging filmmakers who are part of the work that the Roundhouse do with young creatives, and one of that team is my co-presenter Jane Young.
Hello everyone, I'm Jane. I'm one of the young filmmakers here at the Roundhouse, and I'm a bit of an opera newbie, so I'm very excited to be presenting here for the first time ever. not performing with the lovely Sara. So we're looking at Orfeo tonight, and Orfeo is the story of Orpheus going into hell to find his love and bring her back from death. So this production of Orfeo is a new translation by Don Patterson. It's conducted by Christopher Moulds, and it's with the orchestra of the Early Opera Company. So tonight, we have a lineup of all the creative team, including director Michael Boyd. We're also going behind the scenes to look at the set with Tom Piper, and we'll be talking to performers Julia Orent and Susan Bickley, with also a performance from soprano Mary Bevan.
And they're all here in the front row of the Studio Theatre. So, to begin, we'd like to talk a little bit about the collaboration between the Roundhouse and the Royal Opera House, which please welcome from the Roundhouse Nicola Thorold and Caspar Holton from the Royal Opera. Caspar Holton, you're Director of Opera at the Royal Opera House,
Yes.
and I know it's been a bit of a dream of yours to stage an opera at the Roundhouse ever since you took up the position. Why the Roundhouse?
Not at the Roundhouse, with the Roundhouse. That's what's so extraordinary about it. I mean, the venue, of course, yes, it's exciting to put. When I came to see the Roundhouse the first time, it just begs for the big gesture of opera. This incredible space, the sound in there. You just want to hear someone sing the moment you walk in there, so it feels very natural. But I have to say, it was meeting Marcus and his team here and understanding the work that happens here, the engagement they have with you have with your audience here, with the way you train the next generation of theatre makers, of media producers, and it just felt like a really interesting partner to work with. And then it happens that Marcus is also an early music freak, Marcus Davey, who's the director here. And when we came up with the idea of doing Orfeo, a thing that I felt wouldn't have a natural home on our big stage at Covent Garden.
Why is that? Why have you... Because you've started taking early opera out of the Royal Opera House already with your
Orfeo is we call it the world's first opera. Some people even call it its best, so apparently it was all downhill from then. But and it's a style that, if you know opera only from the romantic 19th century opera, where it's very about producing this big sound to go across an enormous orchestra, this is different. This is about producing text. It's really a play set in music, a favola in musica, a fable in music, he calls it, the composer Monteverdi. And you need to be able to do it almost like a drama. And that's why in the big auditorium at the Opera House, I felt that could die a bit. If the singers would have to produce the sound in our big auditorium, I feared that we would not be able to have the intimacy, the sense of text and drama. And being here, being in the round, being so close to the performers, felt like a better home for this piece. So it felt like finally we found a place to do Monteverdi's brilliant piece.
And we're going to hear from the creative team about how they actually managed to do that.
That's then much more difficult than talking about it. Yeah, exactly.
Nicola, Caspar mentioned the work that you do with young people here at the Roundhouse. Give us a brief overview of your Young Creatives programme.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, so the Roundhouse is not just that amazing space, which I hope you're all coming to see the opera in. It is also a charity dedicated to giving creative opportunities for young people, and we work with 3,000 11 to 25-year-olds every year. And they're all abilities. But inevitably, after 8 years of doing that, we're finding some really very talented people coming through, and we're finding people who want to make career in the creative industries. So we have a number of different schemes, of which one is called the Bloomberg Scheme, which some of the people making tonight possible have been part of. And then we have resident artists. We have 100 young people who we think can make the transition between being on one of our programmes and tutored and supported actually into the industry, and we help them do that with various opportunities. It's across a range of art forms. We don't do opera. We do music. we do now, but not with. But we do music, circus, and you'll see some circus and as part of the dance in Orfeo, and we do broadcast and new media, and we do performing arts generally as well. And spoken word is a big thing for us.
You've got some amazing bespoke studios. I mean, we're right now in the Studio Theatre, which is one level below the main space. And if you go out of that door there, you find yourself in an amazing warren of...
Yes, so it's state-of-the-art. There's 24 state-of-the-art studios. There's a radio station there. There's a recording studio there. There's rehearsal space there. So we can offer young people really state-of-the-art facilities in which to develop their work, and all the people that support them are practicing artists or filmmakers or radio makers, and that for us is absolutely key. And I suppose just the other thing to say about it for us is that we absolutely reach out to young people who might not otherwise engage in the arts for whatever reason. So 52% currently of the young people who are with us come from particularly disadvantaged social economic backgrounds, for instance. Which just makes this a really vibrant place, that we've got a whole mix of different people of all ages.
And it's Nicola and Casper, thank you very much indeed for joining us at this event. Stay where you are for one moment, because we have a film to watch. One of the things that the emerging filmmakers have been working hard on is producing a trailer film for Orfeo, which is online already, and it stars Julia Orent in the title role as Orfeo. Let's have a look at that now.
Orfeo, your music has moved me and my wife, Persephone. You may take Eurydice back to the upper world. On one condition, that you do not look back. Now go.
Okay, so that was a trailer made by one of our amazing film team, Alice Sefton. That was directed by her. So now, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to the stage two performers for us, Mary Bevan and Mark Packwood. So, Mary is going to be giving us a very special performance in a moment. But before you do, we'd like to just ask you a quick couple of questions. So, Mary, can you tell us a little bit about the parts that you're going to be playing in Orfeo? Because you're actually playing two parts, is that right?
Three, actually.
Three, oh, right. Wow.
I start off as La Musica, who begins the opera. She introduces the whole thing and asks everyone to be silent. And then that moves swiftly into the first act, where I become Eurydice. I'm sorry, I'm giving something away here. And then after Eurydice dies, I then am the voice of the echo, which is the only thing that Orfeo can hear after he has failed the task of walking out without looking at me. So that's 3 roles.
Right, well, yeah. Busy for you then.
Yeah.
So Orfeo is quite an early opera, isn't it? And I'm quite new to opera. Can you just tell me a little bit about what it's like singing in an early opera?
Well, it's not different in terms of how you sing, but I have to say I have been surprised, because normally you have aria, recitative, trio, duet, chorus, but it feels like it's in very clear sections. People come on and sing their bits. It's almost like an opera of cameos. So Orfeo has really a lot to do, and the rest of us kind of have our little chunks. And it's through written like that, with choruses in between. So there's no, it's kind of all on a level of drama, rather than being up and down and then action and then thought, if you see what I mean. So it's quite different, but I mean the music is absolutely amazing, and it's definitely operatic.
Right, and I suppose that's where, Mark, you come in. So can you tell us a little bit about the orchestra in Orfeo? Because it's a little bit different to maybe the big orchestra that we might presume to the operas that we sort of are used to.
It's still quite a big opera, a big orchestra. There's a continuo group of 2 harpsichords and 3 chitarrone, and added to that, you then have strings and brass, and the orchestration changes from being on earth to being in hell to being in heaven. And there are solo instruments. There's a harp, of course, because Orfeo is the god of the muse of music. We have trombones and cornetti, which are sort of oboes on steroids, for the Hades scene. And there's a keyboard called a regale, which has this squawky sound. It's been known as the squawk machine, which is meant to show the darkness of Pluto's kingdom. And on the earth, we have all the carnival music, recorders, high violins, and flourishing guitars and things. So it's quite a big, varied sound.
Fantastic. And you're going to be playing the harpsichord for us tonight?
Yes.
So can you just tell me a little bit about the song that you're going to perform for us now?
This is the prologue to the whole opera. It's the very beginning. So it starts with the ritornello, which you'll hear repeated throughout the section. It also repeats itself in the opera. And there are, I think, 5 verses of, introducing the opera.
Great, well, I think we should hear it. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark and Mary.
To reach this still shore from the river, and in its journey the very wind shall tarry.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Mary and Mark. I'd like to introduce the creative team now, the director Michael Boyd and designer Tom Piper. You guys have worked together a huge amount since your early days at the Tron in Glasgow. What was the first production you worked on together? Do you remember?
Jack and the Beanstalk? Jack and the Beanstalk, yeah.
Jack and the Beanstalk.
Yeah, it's good to do mic so I can all hear you. Brilliant.
Jack and the Beanstalk.
That'll make it all true.
Lower the phone after that beautiful piece of music.
Yeah.
Michael, this I think is also your 11th production at the Roundhouse. When you were artistic director of the Royal Shakespeare Company, you were here doing the histories in 2008.
Yes, it's cheating slightly, but if you yes, the history cycle, if you count all 8 plays, and then I've did a production of The Tempest here before that, and a production of As You Like It since that. Yeah.
But this is your first opera. What made you did you hold it off until now or not? And if
There was a time at the Tron when I brought in the small-scale tour from Scottish opera, and I remember particularly a Yennefer with a stand-up piano. I think that was the orchestra. Absolutely blowing me away, and that was the first time I had considered. I thought, yes, I think I might try doing some of that, and then the RSC kidnapped me, and I didn't have any time.
So why did you say yes to this then? I mean, what is it about Orfeo in particular?
Well, it's 3 people. It's Monteverdi, who I bumped into via... I got interested in early music. I don't know why, but I bumped into a lot of David Munro's work, even at school, I think. There was an early recording of his called Ecco la Primavera, which I got very interested in, and then gradually accumulated more work that I was enjoying listening to, and then Monteverdi, and I remember, I think the first piece of Monteverdi that I got to know was it was a John Eliot Gardner compilation of dance music, I think, Balli e Balletti, and there's some of Orfeo in there. But then it was the 1631 Vespers for the passing of the plague in Venice that just astonished me and struck me as extraordinarily contemporary as well. It reminded me of a lot of very contemporary 20th century music, as well as being obviously of its time. So Monteverdi, there's Caspar, of whom I am a big fan, and there is Marcus, who had, as a board member of the Roundhouse, one of my son's best friend, while both of them were still at school. And I thought that's how seriously they're taking work with young people. And it's just a very exciting, creative home for me already, the Roundhouse, so it was very easy to just say yes.
And how has it been working with singers, as distinct from actors? Are they a very different breed to work with in the rehearsal room? Mary's gone, so you can say what you want. Although Sue and Julia are still here, we had to meet them, so careful.
You can see already from that trailer what a great film career Julia has ahead of him. One thing, singers know it's only pretend. which is very liberating, because they're not talking normal. They're singing extraordinary sounds. So you don't have to get through that boring old naturalism barrier of actors being interested in what they had for breakfast. Opera singers know that they are at play, and that is immediately liberating. You're 10 miles down the road before you've even begun. I've loved it, but then I've got a gorgeous company.
What were your first conversations together, the two of you, about the production and about how you wanted to sort of view Orfeo?
I think it was acoustic.
It's normally acoustic, yeah.
We've worked here before, and in lots of great big theatres for the spoken word. And something that we always think about is the acoustic of the spoken word. And of course here we're thinking about the acoustic of the sung word, but it is, as Caspar was saying, it is a favola in musica. The story is important, and it's a big decision of both the Opera House and the Roundhouse to commission a new translation by the celebrated Scottish poet Don Paterson. So we wanted it to be heard properly in a round, reverberative space. So actually, you know, that was quite a big thing.
I think Caspar was, you know, a little bit disingenuous saying it's a great space for sound. I mean, it's a challenging space for sound. And when we've been there with the Royal Shakespeare Company, we built our own auditorium and actually made it much smaller. And I was quite shocked to discover that they were hoping that they would sell 1,500 seats a night. And when I first heard it, I thought, it's great. It's going to be promenade. There'll be about 200 people, and we'll just kind of go through on a wonderful journey together. But no, it's the full auditorium. So a lot of the design has been about, we've created a big ceiling, and it's all about making it heard.
Well, I'm going to pause you there because Tom very kindly showed me around the set yesterday, and our emerging filmmakers made a little film about it, which we'll have a look at now. This is the inside of the Roundhouse. With me is Tom Piper, and we are right at the back of your set, which you've basically plonked right in the middle of the Roundhouse, so that all of the action happens between all of the columns of that amazing space. Before we go in, why did you decide to do it like that, to have the action in the middle on this kind of constructed stage? Was that your only option?
Well, there's a response to the space, which is basically round. A lot of the design is based around the acoustics, creating surfaces that the voice can bounce off, but also creating a kind of focus within space. It's deceptive. It's a circular space, but it's set off-centre within the circle. So you get the impression when you come in that you're actually looking at a circle that's in the middle of the circle, but actually it's pushed to the back. So it does mean that most of the audience are actually sort of more towards the front. So it feels like it's in the round, but actually it's more like sort of that as the relationship. I've used very simple plywood, the kind of plywood that you get in building sites as the kind of cheapest thing, and then we've been able to stain it. So it's sort of an abstract courtroom. So the colour has come from looking at images of courts, but also it's from talking to Jean Calment, the lighting designer, and the original model was just white. He was going, well, actually, if I put light on that, it's just going to bounce everywhere, and it'll go off into the audience, and you won't be able to see, and people will be blinded. So, you know, so we then went for a much darker colour. So that was kind of direct response to working with Jean.
So can we go in and have a look then? So here we go through this wonderful plywood arch of ours.
In this opera, there's always a kind of debate about what is the lyre, the kind of music that Orpheus plays. And I think we felt that actually there isn't a physical lyre, it is his orchestra. It's almost like he is a kind of rock god, and these are his sort of musicians. And the musicians really are as much part of the piece as the singers, and I think you want the audience to always be aware of them as part of it. This is the sort of the balcony of the gods, really. I mean, it doesn't look very godly because this is the basic sort of steel deck, and we're being very open about the way that this structure has been made, and that's a direct response to being in this quite industrial environment, and it's sort of famous for doing music gigs and stuff like that. So I kind of felt we don't need to hide any of the 21st century technology. So you can see there are lights in view up there, there are microphones, because people are being amplified, but very subtly, just so it feels acoustic, but everybody in the space can hear. Well, for me, costume
a film made by our emerging filmmakers at the Roundhouse and directed by Francis Silver. Tom, one of the things I'm really struck by, again, as you mentioned in that about the Roundhouse being a space for rock gigs, and we're talking a lot about the acoustic, but this incredible intimacy is how you create that in such a grand space. I mean, you're most recently used to working in an even grander space, the Poppies at the Tower of London, of which you're one of the two people responsible. So how do you kind of draw people into what is almost a chamber experience in such an enormous place?
I suppose I go back to a very formative training, which I was incredibly lucky to go and work for Peter Brook's company, which is actually where I first met Jean Kalman, who lights for Peter Brook, and his empty space of you have an empty space and a person walks across that space and somebody watches them. That's all it takes for an act of theatre to be engaged. And I think what I've learned from him, I've tried to keep in all my work, is that actually a sense of focus within a bigger epic space. So the Bouffe du Nord, Peter's theatre, is a big, beautiful ruined space, and actually to create focus within it, he would often use a carpet. So I kind of think of a design like this. It's creating a playing space for the singers to tell the story. I had a journalist I was talking to today who said, and so is there any set, which is a kind of normal response to my work. And I said, this is it. And he looked slightly confused. But that there is really no set. There is a playing space, and the singers tell the story, and the work with all the young dancers and the ensembles to kind of create sculptural spaces within it. For me, that's a lot more interesting than trying to come up with scenic versions of hell.
So you're working more with a kind of tabula rasa in a way. Michael, you mentioned earlier about Monteverdi seeming very modern to you when you first came across him. Is there something about his music and this opera which lends itself to effectively updated, or at least, you're not setting it in modern times, but we will see a bit of the costumes in a moment, and, they are relatively modern?
I'm not sure, actually. I think it's a 21st century take on counter-Reformation Italy. So yes, people are dressed in modern costume, but I think the way we've ended up looking at the opera and reading the opera is listening out for clues as to what might have been in Monteverdi's conscious or unconscious mind as he was creating the work. So it's a tension line between now and then. I hope we walk that tightrope. It's not a particularly. I'm not interested in translating everything into modernese. No, it's not a comment on anything now.
And in terms of the characters, particularly Orfeo and his decision to turn around. Sorry, spoiler alert. What is your reading of it?
I think Monteverdi presents it as perfectly ambiguous. In fact, he seems to strain to achieve ambiguity, because he does have Orfeo thinking very much that he should turn around no matter what, because love's commands are greater than any god's, than Pluto's. But he doesn't turn round until there is, and it's written in the score, there is a noise behind the stage. So it might be that it is Orfeo failing the test, as Mary so ungenerously said before she left. Or it might be Pluto that is to blame. I think it's interesting, if you look at Pluto closely, he has form with Proserpina, taking her down to hell as captive, and Pluto as the god of Hades stroke hell, what is the most common icon for the god of hell? It's a snake. What killed Eurydice? A snake. I rest my case. I'm interested in the sort of critical though ambiguous again view that Monteverdi takes towards the powerful in the play. If there's one really contemporary thing, perhaps it's about power and its abuses, and the seeming extraordinary power of this brilliant artist, Orfeo, this musician that is celebrated, almost deified by the mighty and the great, and yet is completely at the mercy of their whims. I think that's an interesting tale for any time.
One more aspect of the production that I want to draw you on is the decision to have dancers, movement and circus. And we'll be talking to Liz and Lena, the movement and circus directors, in a moment. But why did you want to have that element in there? Is that also harking back to Monteverdi and the dance pieces in his music?
Well, it's partly we couldn't afford a set. And anyway, we thought it might be more interesting to create the world dynamically. We often work like that, as Tom has mentioned. It's partly a response, very much. It was always going to be a production that worked with the talents of young people, and not as a cute little extra, but as something that ran through the lifeblood of the piece. And we knew that both the Opera House and the Roundhouse do a great deal of very close work with young artists, and dance seemed to be a good place to start. At first, we were thinking purely in terms mostly in terms of the wedding scene, because you have the problem in Orfeo that there are 3 nanoseconds in which to establish this relationship before it's gone, and then you're supposed to invest in it for the rest of the piece. And we wanted to make sure that wedding celebration was something and really celebrated the passion of this love. And dance, there's some beautiful, beautiful dance music in it, so we wanted to exploit that. Actually, because of Liz and Lena and the brilliance of the group that we've got, they've ended up being woven through everything. And also, I have to say, because by pure chance, we ended up with 2 brilliant dancers in Jula and Mary as the lead couple.
Tom, in a moment we're going to see another film that our emerging filmmakers have made about the costume process. And you designed the costumes as well. Is that always a given, that the designer of the set also does the costumes?
It tends to be in this country because it's cheaper to do that. You have to pay one fee.
Honestly, what is this? Can't afford a set, can't afford a costume designer.
This
is the Royal Opera House, please.
Yes. It has been an interesting design journey, this, in terms of, because it is a big space and it is a big cast, and there are limited resources, so we have been on a journey of sort of paring back and finding the right solutions. And actually, on the design journey, we began initially looking at kind of hospitals, almost end-of-life experience that kind of raged against the dying of the light. So some of that is still in the set in a kind of vestigial way. There's the balcony of the gods looking down is kind of reminiscent of those operating theatres where people look down on the corpse at the bottom. So I've kind of got slightly sidetracked.
Costumes. I just want one word on the kind of general design of the costumes, because we're going to see a little film.
It is contemporary, but what I try and do is try and keep it simple, so that it isn't actually, as Michael said, about what you've had for breakfast or the narrative background of each character. It's actually creating, quite strong looks for things. So you've got the chorus, who feel like a big group of jurors, working very closely with colour, so that Orpheus and Eurydice are light for the wedding and everyone else is dark, so they're set against this sort of dark world.
Great. Well, Michael and Tom, thank you very much. Let's have a look at that film that the emerging filmmakers made in the costume studios at the Royal Opera House.
Well, for me, costume in any form of theatre, opera or film, or any performance media is crucial, because actually all you need to tell a story is an actor or a singer to come in front of an audience and start telling that story, but they've got to be wearing something. So for this production of Orfeo, we've gone for a very contemporary telling of the story.
My job as a supervisor starts with a briefing with the designer, and it follows up by researching fabrics, materials, and also processes in which way we can achieve whatever the designer has established. This journey has been really interesting, and it was the first time for me to work with Tom Piper. His approach to the creative process was quite different, I think, from other people that I worked with before. His style is very neat, quite minimalistic in a way, but I think it's also very poetic, and that's the part that I've enjoyed the most. Every little detail behind all the costumes, they all relate to part of the characters.
What I've done, I suppose, is more like mood boards. So like you've got here Orfeo, who we're thinking of as sort of like a, you know, like a film star. He's a semi-god, and in a kind of modern world, you know, who are the kind of the semi-gods? They are the kind of the famous entertainers, really. So what I've done is I've, you know, found lots of examples of suits and things like that, and then the team here at the Opera House, what they've done is, you know, we've looked online, we've gone shopping, we've found things. And of course, you know, we're now doing this at Christmas, and we're trying to find a cream summer suit, you know, so that's been quite a tricky kind of technical challenge to do.
For this particular production, we've been sourcing stuff and buying rather than making. The beauty about designers is their ability to actually transform what is a common dress that everybody could buy and wear into something different, into something that appeals to the character, and to something that also appeals to the particular style that the designer has. And I think it's really beautiful to be able to recognise that when you're watching a show.
When you're doing something contemporary with a period piece, there's always a thing of kind of, well, why haven't they got mobile phones, and why haven't they got an iPad, and why, you know, what, and all of that kind of modern technology and paraphernalia. So we've got to be quite careful that the looks that we create for people are not so accurate and specific that people can look at it and go, oh, you know, I recognise that dress from, you know, a particular pop star who wore it, or a particular sort of famous thing, or, you know, it's trying to keep it simple, and that is actually harder than it sounds, you know, to sort of strip it back and make it not so detail and period specific.
A film about the costumes made by our emerging filmmakers. It was edited by Pippa Riddick and Benjamin Neustadt, and it was directed by my co-presenter tonight, Jane Young, all very talented. Well, joining me now here in the Studio Theatre are Lena Johansson, who's directing the circus movement, and the movement director, Liz Rankin. Welcome to you both. Tell us a little bit about specifically what you've been working on, Lena, with the kind of circus element of this production.
So I've been creating the set, which they couldn't afford. But so I've been working with the dancers to, one of the themes have been looking scenographically at creating things. So one of the themes that we were looking at was arches. So for the wedding scene, we're creating this grand arch, which Eurydice and Orfeo tied a knot under, literally like where they get married.
So an arch of bodies.
An arch of bodies, balancing on top of each other. And what we wanted to, well, and then later on, we create more corrupted, again, arches of bodies, which symbolizes the gate to hell, which Orfeo has to go through to get down into the underworld. What we wanted to achieve was to play with, well, not only visually to create this, but also to strengthen the emotions and strengthen the emotion of love. And one of the themes, and an expression that I feel the acrobatic and circus is very good at expressing is of trust and of risk. And obviously in love, I think, if you love someone, you have to put a lot of trust into them, and you also take a big risk when you wholeheartedly love somebody. So by building these towers of bodies and people falling and being caught, I'm hoping to strengthen those feelings for the audience, because the trust is real and the risk is real. So to get the audience to watch it with their bodies as well as with their minds.
And how closely have you two worked together on this? Liz, have you been in on that as well, or have you been working on different work with the young dancers from the East London Dance?
We've tended to sort of split the core in, I would say. I have a sort of particular process, and so does Lena. So we've tended to sort of split the group, really, haven't we? Yes.
And I work very close together to plan it all, and then, but in the room,
we were both there and then split into working on different things with.
Because I've popped into rehearsal a couple of times over the last couple of days, and Liz, I've seen an awful lot of you rolling around on the floor. What's going on there?
Well, I usually work with the devising process, and particularly with this group of working with these amazing youngsters from the East End. There's a raw brilliance that I feel is absolutely perfect for the Roundhouse. There's a sort of a purity, a rawness, and for Monteverdi, where it's sort of very specific sort of narrative, and the music. The vibrato comes in and out, but very specific and technically difficult music. I'm not an expert on it, but some of the dancers have a sort of awesome facility coming from the street. One of them can jump 7 feet with no run-up, and, these sort of hand balances and springs. So my technique is always to try and liberate the performer to use what they want to use, and a process of creatively bringing them into the moment, into the now, and see just what they want to do in the now, or to observe them when they're messing around and they don't know I'm watching them.
It's funny hearing the two of you talk. There's a tension between the liberation and being in the now and playing around, and the extreme trust needed for the circus high wire act. Tell me a little bit more about these young dancers then, just very briefly. How old are they?
Well, we were asked to get basically to create a group of people who hadn't really had this sort of experience before. So it's working together with East London Dance. We went out and did taster classes, and it was for young people between 11 and 21-year-old. So we went out into schools and did taster classes. Also, my company member has done a lot of work with young people in Hackney, so we held a taster class then. And then people from there could choose to come and do an audition. And from the audition, we brought a group of young people together who had not worked together before, and we worked with them since the end of October.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both very much indeed for joining us this evening. Still to come, we're going to hear from Jula Orent, who's singing Orfeo, and Susan Bickley, The Messenger. But before that, more from our emerging filmmakers. Jane popped into the main space during the rehearsals I mentioned to have a look.
So here we are outside the main space, where we're going to go in and have a quick sneak peek of the rehearsals. Come on. We are in the piano rehearsal, which is the first rehearsal in the main space here at the Roundhouse. We can see a lot of important discussions going on. We've got our director Michael Boyd and Tom Piper, as well as choreographer and the circus director, who've all been working very, very hard to put this all together. For the young people that we've got performing in this opera, it's their first time ever in a professional production. Over here we can see the large runway that the singers have been walking up and down. We had Orfeo walking down into the underworld, and all of the bodies sort of rolling around on the floor. It looked absolutely incredible. And the sound is unbelievable. The acoustics are just so warm. It's so exciting to be here while this is in the process of being made. There's still a lot of work being done to the set as we speak, so a lot of people are still sort of like fiddling around with things, making some adjustments, just to make sure it's absolutely perfect for the night. It's a great atmosphere in here. Really looking forward to seeing the finished production. The great thing about Orfeo is that we've got dancers and circus performers, singers and musicians all on this one stage working together. It's absolutely huge. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I am here with two of the stars of Orfeo. We've got Jula Orent and Susan Bickley here. So could you both tell me a little bit about the rehearsal process? It was a true privilege to be in there yesterday, and I've got to say the space was just unbelievable. What was it like rehearsing in there?
Well, we did rehearse quite a lot in the Roundhouse. We had just a rehearsal room without original set, but it was, well, I can tell, I think there was a lot of experiment and looking who can show itself and which way. So it was finding the road to get things together. And then we came to the Roundhouse. It was amazing. So it did give a huge boost, I think, to our field for the music, for the acoustic, for the space, and also to sing more than 300 degrees, which is unusual for us. Usually we have, okay, let's say 120, and it should be enough. See, I think it's a good, really useful experience. Yeah.
Great. And Sue, yourself, you've performed in a lot of Royal Opera House productions. How is it for you performing in this unique space?
Oh, it's a wonderful space to perform in. It actually takes me back because I first performed there about 30 years ago in the Roundhouse doing contemporary music. And actually, it feels like this is a piece of contemporary music to me. It's not so different in that respect. It's such a modern production that it feels like coming home.
Oh, lovely. And can you tell me a little bit about the rehearsal itself? How has it been working with Michael, the director, who's from a theatre background?
Well, it's always different to work with theatre directors, although there are more of them doing opera productions these days. It's a slightly different process in that it's not coming from a musical aspect necessarily, and there's more contribution and more collaboration with the music side of things. But we're all aiming for the same piece of theatre, so it's not that different, really.
I think so, especially with this piece, which is the text. Everything is about the text, rarely is about dance and music. I think it's really good to approach it from a theatre point of view, which is, I think, is really healthy. It helps us to be, while singing, still to try to express ourselves naturally, just thinking the feelings and not doing artificial things. It was useful, absolutely useful. Yeah.
Great, and the Roundhouse is really well known for its poetry scene. We've got this text that's been translated by Don Patterson, who is, of course, a poet. Now, Julia, you've sung this before in Italian. What's it like singing it in English?
Yeah, it is a different piece in some ways, I have to say. Well, Italian is somehow more natural, but despite that, I think English is amazing translation, which I really love. I somehow had to relearn, redigest, rechew the piece, and I think I got much more close to it while singing it in English. Yeah, I think even the language English language is not my favorite, but I think my most, beside my mother language, Hungarian, is my most closest language, which really helps to not to think about what the word means, just feeling it and just telling it simply. And you just, yeah.
And do you enjoy being the sort of rock god of the opera?
Well, I don't know if I'm going to be a rock god, but it is...
Oh, you are.
Michael. Well, I do enjoy it. It is really a freedom, a passion, limitless. Well, the problem is with Orfeo, you have little joy. I mean, Monteverdi in Striggio gives little joy and a lot of suffering. And this little joy comes out in the music. It's good to be wild and to be cloudless, because then afterwards it's going to faint and go down and going to turn off the many faces of suffering. So I think it's good to be happy when you can.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I've got to say I've been thoroughly converted to an opera fan now. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, ladies and gentlemen, Sue and Julia.
Well, that is unfortunately all we've got time for, but I hope we've whetted your appetite for this extraordinary production. I want to say a huge thank you to everyone here on the front row, all of cast and creative crew who've taken part in tonight's event.
We also have some tickets for Orfeo on sale via the Roundhouse website, which is www.roundhouse.org.uk. There is a handful of lower price tickets at £5 via our Get It In scheme, which is for 16 to 25-year-olds.
If you've been watching on our live stream at home on either the Royal Opera House's website or on the Roundhouse YouTube channel, thank you for joining us. Tell everyone about this production, come and see it yourselves. And of course there is a hashtag. It's hashtag Orfeo. If you're on Twitter, get get involved in the discussion around the production, which opens on Tuesday. And thank you ever so much to everyone for coming tonight. Enjoy your evening and safe journey home.